The Steward's Mind, a 30-day biblical wealth psychology journey. This is week 3, The Mind, sessions 11 to 15. Our anchor scripture, Romans 12, verse 2, "Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, His good, pleasing, and perfect will." Paul did not say feel differently. He did not say try harder. He said be transformed, a passive voice, structural change by the renewing of your nous or your mind. The mind is the workshop where the lev is renovated. Week 3 is about understanding how that workshop actually operates. Session 11. How the mind actually changes. Welcome to Session 11. I am Rich Abbott. This is the Steward's Mind, Week 3, the first session of 5 on the theme of the mind. In Week 2, we did the hard interior work. We named what was in the lev. We traced it to its sources. We learned what it means to stand at the gate and to take thoughts captive. And in Session 10, we looked at 3 practices that support genuine renewal: declaration, evidence collection, and environment curation. This week we go deeper into the mechanics, because here is something I wish someone had told me 40 years ago. Transformation is not mysterious. It is not random. It does not happen to some people and not others for reasons that cannot be understood. Transformation follows a process, and that process, described by Paul in Romans 12 verse 2, has been confirmed in extraordinary detail by neuroscience in the last 30 years. The brain changes, literally, physically, structurally changes in response to what you think repeatedly, in response to what you practice, in response to the patterns of thought you reinforce day after day. Paul called it the renewing of the nous, your mind. Neuroscientists call it neuroplasticity. They're describing the same reality from different vantage points. Today we look at how the mind actually changes and what that means for your financial life. Part 1. The myth of the fixed mind. For most of human history, the dominant assumption about the brain was that it was essentially fixed. You were born with a certain capacity, certain tendencies, certain wiring, and that wiring was more or less permanent by the time you reached adulthood. This assumption shaped everything: education, medicine, psychology, and theology. If the mind is fixed, then transformation is superficial at best. You can manage behavior, you can discipline yourself, but the underlying patterns, the deep grooves of thought and response, those were considered permanent. That assumption has been overturned entirely. What researchers have now confirmed through decades of brain imaging, clinical study, and longitudinal research is that the brain retains the capacity to change throughout the entire lifespan. New neural pathways can be formed. Old ones can be weakened through disuse. The brain is not a fixed structure, but a dynamic, responsive organ that reshapes itself in response to experience, attention, and repetition. This is neuroplasticity, and it is one of the most significant scientific discoveries of the last century. Here's what it means for you practically. The patterns of thought that have been running your financial life are not permanent. They are grooves, well-worn pathways in the brain that have been reinforced over years and decades. But grooves can be redirected. new pathways can be built, and the old ones, deprived of reinforcement, will weaken over time. Paul knew this. He did not have the language of neuroscience, but he had the revelation of God, and what he wrote in Romans 12 verse 2 is a precise description of a real process. Be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Not hope for transformation, not ask for transformation. Cooperate with the process of transformation by renewing deliberately and consistently the mind. Part 2. How neural pathways form. Let me explain briefly how this works, because understanding the mechanism makes the practice make sense. Every thought you think travels along a neural pathway, a physical connection between neurons in the brain. The first time a thought travels a particular route, the pathway is faint, the signal is weak, the connection is tenuous. But every time that same thought travels the same route, the pathway strengthens. The connection becomes more efficient. The signal travels faster. And eventually, after enough repetition, the pathway becomes automatic. The thought fires without any conscious effort at all. This is how a belief becomes an automatic response. It started as a thought. It was repeated, reinforced, confirmed by experience. And eventually it became a pathway so well worn that it fires on its own, producing feelings, decisions, and behaviors without any conscious deliberation. This is good news and difficult news at the same time. The difficult news is that the pathways that are running your limiting financial beliefs are deeply grooved. They have been reinforced for years. They do not disappear quickly. The good news is that they can be replaced. Every time you choose a different thought, a thought rooted in truth, in Scripture, in the reality of who God says you are, and what He says about stewardship, you are laying down a new pathway. And every time you reinforce that new pathway through declaration, through evidence collection, through deliberate attention, you are strengthening it. The old pathway does not disappear overnight, but it weakens, and the new pathway grows stronger, until one day, and this is what Paul meant by transformation, the new pathway becomes the default. The new thought fires first. The new belief is the one that runs. Part 3. Attention is the tool. Here's a key insight I want you to carry from this session. Attention is the tool. The brain strengthens what you attend to. Whatever you focus on consistently, whatever you give sustained, repeated attention to, that is what grows. That is what becomes more automatic. That is what shapes the default responses of the lev. This is why Paul's instruction in Philippians 4:8 is not merely inspirational. It is neurological. Whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, think about such things. Think about, attend to, focus on, deliberately, repeatedly, consistently. Because what you think about consistently is what your brain builds pathways toward. And the pathways your brain builds determine the automatic responses that shape your financial decisions, your risk tolerance, your relationship with opportunity, your capacity to receive and manage increase. You are not just choosing your thoughts. You are choosing the architecture of your mind. Part 4. the financial application. Let me bring this to the ground level. Most people's financial thought life is dominated by what I call default inputs, the automatic thoughts that fire without conscious intention. Scarcity thoughts, comparison thoughts, fear thoughts, resignation thoughts. I do not have enough. People like me do not build wealth. Every time I get ahead, something goes wrong. I will probably always be in this same place. Those thoughts are firing automatically because the pathways are well worn. They have been reinforced thousands of times. They feel like reality because they arrive so quickly and so convincingly. But they are not reality. They are pathways, and pathways can be redirected. The work of week 3 is to begin building the alternative pathways, deliberately, consistently, with the understanding that every repetition matters. Every declaration is a deposit. Every moment of deliberate attention to a true thought about your identity as a steward, about God's purpose for wealth, about your capacity to build, every one of those moments is laying down a new pathway. It does not feel dramatic. It does not feel like much is happening. But the brain is being renovated. The news, your mind, is being renewed, exactly as Paul said. Part 5, Reflection. Before you close this session, I want you to identify your 3 most frequent default financial thoughts, the ones that arrive automatically, without invitation, when money is on your mind. Write them down. Do not edit them. Just name them. Then, next to each one, write the alternative, the true thought, grounded in Scripture or in the reality of who you are as a steward, that you want to become the new pathway. You are not fighting the old thoughts. You are building the new ones, and repetition is how you build. Closing declaration. Say this: my mind is not fixed, it is being renewed. Every true thought I choose is a pathway being built. I attend deliberately to what is true, what is noble, what is aligned with God's purpose for my life. I am not managing my behavior, I am renewing my mind. And a renewed mind produces a transformed life. This is Rich Abbott. This is the Steward's Mind. Session 12 is next.